Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be making images from scrap paper. Now look at my nails. I'm not minging, I have washed my hands, I've been gardening this morning. Don't worry, later in the video after I take a proper shower it will disappear. So if you're wondering why I'm looking grubby, that's why. It's just one of those things when you garden, you can never get out your nails till you have a proper soak in the tub or a shower. Okay, so I'm going to be using my scrap papers from previous projects. I'm going to show you how to use them to make really cute, simple images. We've got some book pages, some brown papers, some scrap cream and tea stained paper. I'm just going to pick and choose through some of them to make a little image. Now all you need for this project is your scraps, some watercolor paints and some colouring pens, and a glue. You'll need a glue and a pair of scissors. But yeah, this is how to make images when you don't have images and you just have a pile of scrap paper like this. So if you're not a very good drawer, a good tip is to go on to Google Images and pick some colouring book images that have really simple shapes. Print off a colouring book image and use it as a template. I am going to draw freehand, but I'm going to show you, and I'm going to wet my watercolour palette with some water before I get started, just to let it sit and moisten itself up. Now you don't need to use expensive watercolours, you can use the cheap watercolours that you get in Poundland. You don't really need good watercolours to do this. You just need really watery paint, and if you don't have watercolours and you only have acrylic paint, just water them down a lot until you get a really runny consistency. I'm going to spray my paper beforehand because I really want this to run and bleed, because the goal is to still see your paper through your colours. I'm going to go as basic can be. You don't need any painting skills for this. You're just going to start dabbing on your colours for your background. So this word paper is going to be my background sheet. I'm just going to dab on some colours and let the water do its work. Keep your paint really watery. Use quite a fluffy brush and just dab water. Now I'm going to concentrate all my colours on my edges of everything that I draw and cut out. It makes a really good effect if you concentrate the darkest part of your colour on the edges and leave the centre sort of see-through. Now as my background piece, I'm obviously going to put some colour in the middle. I'm going to use a couple of different greens and I'm just splodging them about. There is no skill required for this project. So once you've done that, you're going to put it off somewhere to completely dry and leave it alone. Let it do what it wants to do with the water on the paper. Just leave it somewhere to dry. You're going to clean off your little surface in a second. Okay, once you have cleaned that off, you're going to start drawing your little elements. Now if you have a colouring page that you're using as a guide, cut out the colouring page pieces into the little sections you're going to use, or do what I'm doing and freehand. Now I'm going to draw the tops of some toadstools on this paper, and I've just realised that I'm drawing on the wrong side. Draw on the back of the piece you're going to use, not the front, so you can get rid of any pencil lines if you don't cut them off properly. And I'm just going to cut a couple of toadstool heads on this one. The paper does not matter at all. If it's got printing on it, if it's got lines on it, it just adds to the character. And then you're going to cut them out. So you're going to cut out little pieces and shapes for every part of your picture. Toadstools are really easy because they're basically two parts, a head and a stem. You could do flowers, just like a flower shape with a circle centre. You could do leaves. You could do something more intricate by using multiple little images stuck together, but I'm just showing you how basic this is and how effective it is. Okay, so I cut out of that bit of paper, but I'm going to take different paper to do the stems. I probably should have went with a light coloured paper for the stems, considering they're normally white, but I wasn't really caring. I wanted this to be as artistic and just spontaneous, and that piece of paper just fell into my hands. I'm going to cut out the stems. I left a little wider space at the top just to glue onto, but I don't actually need it. And I'm just going to trim them. Now I'm going to get all my bits of paper ready before I start the painting process, and the painting is so super simple that you're going to convince yourself you're an artist when you're done, even if you're someone that can't draw or paint, because that's how effective this is. Going to get your little bits of paper. So 2 stems, 2 toadstool heads. And we're going to paint these before I cut out any more. Now for the stems, I decided on a brown colour, but when this dries it doesn't actually show up very well, so I should have gone a bit darker, but probably should have used light coloured paper to begin with. So to make your paint blend, don't forget to spray your paper. If it curls up a wee bit like this, don't worry, it'll flatten out as it dries again. The trick is to keep your colour right at the edges and just let the water pull that colour into the middle by itself, so it creates like a fade, a gradual little blend. Move them aside to let them dry, and between every colour I am cleaning my desk too, so that I'm not mixing colours. And then for the toadstool heads, I'm going to pick a really dark red. I started with this one, realised I should go for the darker one, and I'm just, once again, I'm going to concentrate on the edges. I'm going to spray my 2 bits of paper and then just concentrate on the edges. If your paint is not blending very well, once you've added colour here, just spray it again. Keep a spray bottle handy, and as you can see, it will start pulling all the paint into the middle and blend it. Now it looks very dark right now, but with watercolour it always dries much more subtle, so don't worry if it's looking like you've used way too much paint. As long as your paint is really watery and thin, it will work out fine. So I'm just going to leave them to dry for the time being, and I'm also going to pick up this bit. As you see, it's been torn, perfect for grass, so I'm going to keep this bit of paper as it is. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to spray down my bit of paper, and I am going to use green and colour this edges of this one. So basically every shape you cut out, you're going to concentrate on the edges, and that's where the most of the colour. Now this grass, I'm putting some into the middle a little bit because I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to use, and it's technically a background piece, so anything that's background you can bring the colour further in. It doesn't need to be completely blank in the middle, but as long as you spray everything down and let the water do its job, it'll look fabulous. I mean, you saw how basic that was, no painting skill required. And I'm just going to leave everything to dry. Okay, we have come back and everything is completely dry, as you can see, and as you see, a lot of it dried a little bit more subtle, but it looks good. And now we are going to do the fun part. And it looks like a hot mess right now, but trust the process. We're going to glue these together and make ourselves artwork, and then we're going to get to the fun part, which is using colouring pens. So I'm going to glue on my background grass to my background. I should have probably done my book page blues instead of green, made it like more of a sky. It would have been cute, but at the time I was just making it up as I went along. I wasn't sure how it was going to look. I'm putting it up quite high because I'm only going to make a small card. I'm going to trim this down. So let's start layering up our images. Now if you were using a colouring book image, just use your original image as a guide for how you're supposed to put everything together. And here we go with the colouring pens. Now I don't actually own colouring pens, so I'm using my Arteza watercolour pens, but you do this with Sharpies, you can do this with kids colouring pens. You're basically going to doodle. You're going to take a darker version of the colour your thing is, and you're just going to focus on the edges and add in little odd details in any way you see fit. You're just going to doodle, and the messier and less precise it is, the more it works for this style. It's very therapeutic. You can be messy, you can just chuck on some lines like I'm doing, and I'm going to just make sure that whatever colour I'm about to doodle on, I'm just picking the darker version of it. So there we go, I've gone to a different green, and this is the same as inking the edges of your pieces. These brushes are a little bit awkward because they've got such a pointy tip, but I used to love these brushes, these brush pens. I used to use these for absolutely everything. I'm not actually just a paper crafter. I do digital art and illustrations. I'm a mixed media artist, and I also do other things relating to art. So I used to do a lot of drawing and painting, hence why I have watercolour pens. I'm going to trim down my paper because I want to do the bottom edge too. So basically what you're doing with these colour pens is you're inking. You're inking but with colours, and you're making it part of the image to make this look more pulled together and polished with zero skill. Now I've realised that working with the brush pointing off the paper works better with these ones, but if you're using felt tip pens you won't have the problems I'm having. So once I've done that base, I'm then going to go and stick on my toadstools. I'm going to glue them on. As you can see, nothing showed up with the paint I used. It was too light, so I'm going to grab a darker colour of brown in my pens. And kids' pens, really chunky ones, would work really well for this. Even just ordinary colouring pens. It's a time to be free, let the inner child in you just have at it. Just basic shapes, chuck some pen around the edges, throw some watercolours about, and the end product is going to make such a cute journaling card. Like, how it looks now is not a hint at how cute it ends up. It's one of these trust the process things. I don't even need to colour in as high up as I am because those bits are getting covered. So then we're going to glue these onto the paper. And I don't even have a set plan for my finished image. I'm just making this up as I go. If you had a set plan, you could maybe draw yourself a little sketch how you wanted everything to come together in the end. Even better. But this was just a what's on my desk, what can I make kind of moment. This is great for if you don't have the perfect image for your journal and you want something a little bit whimsical, a little bit colourful. You can just make an image like this. Okay, I'm going to get a red pen for my toadstools. Always just go a shade or two darker. That is where the magic is. No matter what watercolour paint is on your piece of your image, go a shade darker. And it will genuinely look like you've inked the edges. Now these watercolour pens are actually really good. If I wet a brush and took water to the edges, I would blend them out even more. But obviously I'm going for the colouring pen look, so I don't want to do that. They weren't that expensive either. I think I have the smaller pack of these watercolour pens and they're really inky and juicy. They're like, I really like them. I've got a lot of Arteza stuff actually. Okay, so they're ready to get glued on. We're going to glue this. The glue in this little bottle is just PVA glue, just regular all crafts kids glue. I'm going to stick that on and look at what these defined edges are doing for this picture already, and we're not even done yet. It's going to look even cuter when we're finished. It's such a simple process. You don't need to have any artistic skills to do this. Stick this one on, just overlapping it slightly to make it seem like it's more in front. And you can still see your book paper shining through, which is what we're going for. I should have used a patterned one for the grass too, and it would have been even cooler. Okay, I'm going to leave them to dry for now, and I'm going to go and find my... Oh, no, I'm not done. I forgot. I'm going to bring in some other pens. These are thinner pens, fine line coloured pens, and I'm going to add some little doodles here and there. You don't need to do this step, but you can just colour in, doodle any way you see fit. And just add little details. It'll all just bring your little image to life. Okay, now I'm going to get myself some white paint because the toadstools obviously need their spots. So off to my little stash of white paint. I was looking for the most basic white paint I owned. I own quite a few different types, and I found the cheapest of the cheap kids paint. As you can see, it is very runny. I should have picked a much better paint, but it was to hand. I'm just using the end of my paintbrush, and I'm going to just chuck on some dots on here, just randomly. If you don't dip every single time you print a dot, they will get smaller each time. So that's how to get different sizes. As you can see, they get tinier and tinier because you're running out of paint. And then we're just going to leave that to dry because we're going to doodle some more. But look at how it's looking so far, and this is without even adding any of the doodling. Such an effective way of making art when you don't really want to make really detailed or really, what's the word I'm looking for, when you put a lot of effort and a lot of skill and talent into it. I'm a lover of this kind of art. I'm going to find my green pen. Nope, it wasn't that one. And I'm going to add in some grass doodles, just chucking some. I mean, I'm not even trying to be neat here. I'm literally just chucking on some little doodles, little shadow there, and just drawing it on my background. some lines and squiggles and all this good stuff, and that will bring my grass to life. And there, we're going to leave it like this for now until it dries a little bit more. That white paint is going to take an age to dry, and I'm going to regret my decision to use it, but it is what it is. So while it's drying, I'm going to glue this onto its backing. This is going to be a journaling card, so the backing I'm going to use is this brown paper, and I'm going to use my trusty UHU glue. Now, don't be me. Let it dry first before you do this. But I knew I was going to have to let it dry before I went for it while I go for a shower, so I thought I may as well do it all in one sitting, get it all like drying up for me to come back to. But you know, I've got wet paint on my picture, so I'm going to have to be very careful. So I'm covering that whole thing with UHU glue, and I'm going to stick on my little image and very carefully press it down in all the places where the paint is not wet. And then I'm going to use a paintbrush to try and press down between all the dots. Yeah, just let your paint dry. It's way less hassle. But there we go, it's stuck down, and I'm going to leave that to dry before I come back and finish it off. Okay, so I returneth with clean fingernails because I had an actual shower and I got most of it out, and as you can see, my white paint was still wet. This is what I'm talking about, that I came to regret using it. It took forever. I'm going to trim down my little note card because everything else is dry, just not the white paint. I guess that's what you get for using cheap kids white craft white paint. I'm going to trim down my little notelet. This is a good opportunity to take away any uneven edges. I'm very tired today. I've been doing a lot of physical stuff in my garden all week, and I feel like my battery has run down. So this project was actually a nice little break. Okay, so even though it's not completely dry, I'm going to come in and knock over all of my glue and everything to the side of me, because that's just how I roll. And I'm going to use just a black fine liner pen, and I'm going to finish off my details by outlining everything. You don't need to do this step if you like the look of it just with the coloured edges, but I like to doodle on top with a black pen when I'm doing this kind of image. I feel like it just gives it something a little extra. And I don't do nice, even, perfect lines. I do choppy, short lines, and I'm not very careful with them, and it just adds to the style. And you want to outline absolutely every one of your pieces of your image, no matter what it was. And you also want to go over some of your little details you did, add in extra grass strokes. It's just adding the black to the front of everything. I'll just bring it all together. And I'm also going to go around my edges a little bit of my grass. Not heavily, this is more like doodling. As you can see, I'm not like being particularly great. And around the edges of my entire piece, because we're doing this without any inking whatsoever. We're doing this purely with pens and cheap watercolour paints and scrap paper. All the way around. This is great if you don't have any inks. And I'm also going to go around my white paint, but because it's still wet, I'm going to give it a little gap and try not to touch the paint because I don't want to ruin my pen. This is just a cheap fine liner pen that came in a set from Amazon, but I still love them and use them for everything, so I don't want to ruin it. So if you're going to do this, make sure everything's completely dry. Don't waste a nice black pen on wet paint. So once I've gone around all of the circles, I mean, look how adorable that is, and added a couple more little doodles here and there. You could add anything to your picture. You could add little stars up in the book page, whatever. I'm going to add some ink in now. I'm just showing you the back is nice and dry in a good journaling spot. I'm going to grab a brown pen that we used on the stems of the toadstools, and we're just going to use this in the way we would use an ink pad to ink up our edges. Just turn a pen on its side, run it along the edges, and it will do the same thing and make it look fabulous. Now this could be you finished at this point, but I think a little extra detail is to run to my sewing machine and give it a little edge of stitching all the way around, because I just love that look. And there we go. I'm just going to trim off the threads, and we have ourselves a little scrap journaling card that could go in a perfect little woodlandy whimsical journal, and you have a little spot to write on the back, made purely from scraps of paper. So if you have a go at this technique, let me know. Show me your pictures. Don't forget to hashtag L.T.Marshall craft if you do it on social media, or come and find me on Instagram and tag me in your pictures. Show me your little cutesy creations, and I'll catch you in the next video.